Hello and welcome to BBC World News. We begin with breaking news this hour. Pakistan says it has shot down 2 Indian aircraft which it claims were over Pakistani airspace. The Pakistani military also says its warplanes carried out airstrikes inside India. India says the Pakistani jets were forced to retreat by its own aircraft, but has not confirmed whether any of its planes were shot down. Well, details are still emerging, but a spokesman for the Pakistani Armed Forces, Major General Asif Ghafoor, has tweeted this. He says that in response to Pakistan Air Force strikes, the Indian Air Force crossed the line of control, the LOC, in Kashmir. He goes on to say that Pakistan shot down 2 Indian aircraft inside Pakistani airspace. One of the aircraft fell on Pakistan-controlled Kashmir, that's written here as AJ and K, and the other fell inside IOC, that's how Pakistan refers to Indian-controlled Kashmir. He finishes by saying that 1 Indian pilot was arrested by Pakistani troops on the ground. Well, let's get more now from our correspondents in Delhi, Sangeeta Maiska, and from Islamabad, I'm joined by Sukunda Kamani. Let's go to Sukunda Kamani first. Welcome to you. Tell us exactly what we know has happened and what we're hearing from the military, Sukunda.
So I've just come out of a briefing, a press conference by the Pakistani military. The Pakistani military spokesman broke down the chronology of these dramatic events that took place today. According to him, this began when Pakistani jets from within Pakistani airspace targeted Indian positions within India across the border. As a response to those strikes, he says that Indian jets crossed over into Pakistani airspace, and Pakistani planes shot down 2 Indian jets. As a result of that, he says 2 Indian pilots have been taken into custody. There had been some reports in Indian media that a Pakistani plane had been shot down by Indian forces. The Pakistani military has said that is not true. Now, I asked the Pakistani military spokesman if these actions by Pakistan in targeting, in carrying out these strikes across the border in India were pushing the 2 countries to the brink of war. He said they weren't. He said that Pakistan had acted responsibly, and he said Pakistan had deliberately chosen not to hit Indian military targets or areas where civilians were living in India, but open ground just across the border in India. And he said that the Pakistani military did this because they wanted to act, in his words, responsibly. They don't want the situation to escalate further, but certainly these developments will cause huge concern amongst the international community and in the region.
Well, that's the explanation from Islamabad. Let's go to Sangeeta Maiska in Delhi. What's the Indian reaction been, Sangeeta?
Well, what's very interesting, Samantha, is that given the gravity of Pakistan's allegations, officials here in Delhi have yet to issue a response. The only person we've heard from is Sushma Swaraj. Now, she is India's foreign minister, and she's currently holding talks with the Chinese abroad. She issued a statement this morning, simply reiterating, really, what has been a long-standing position of the Indian government, which is that they only take action against Pakistan-controlled territories when they are trying to crack down on militants who are attempting to destabilize India. And she said that the Indians are in no way looking for an escalation of tensions.
So from both sides saying they're not looking for an escalation in tensions. But Sukunda, just explain the chronology over the past few weeks of how we've got to this point.
That's right. This all began around 2 weeks ago when a militant group carried out a suicide bombing in Indian-administered Kashmir. Now, the militant group that claimed responsibility for this has a base in Pakistan and has, according to a number of observers, in the past at least, had strong links to the Pakistani intelligence services. That led Indian authorities to blame not just this Pakistani militant group, but effectively the Pakistani state for being involved in this attack, which led to the death of around 40 Indian troops. As a result, yesterday, the Indian Air Force crossed over into Pakistani airspace and carried out some attacks They said they targeted a base of this militant group. They said they killed a number of militants. Eyewitnesses on the ground in the Pakistani military seem to deny that. They say that actually just a few civilian houses were damaged, one person was injured, and there was nothing quite as dramatic as what India was claiming. This response from Pakistan that we've seen today is really the latest in this sequence of unfolding events of this conflict between these two countries.
Sangeeta, how serious an escalation do you think events of the past few hours really are for the two countries now?
Well, just to set this in some sort of context, India's incursion into Pakistani airspace was the first of its kind since 1971, which just shows the kind of serious consideration that the Indian authorities have been giving their response to that terror atrocity that Secunda was just referring to there. This incursion of airspace is something that is really very unusual. What you usually see is along the line of control, which is effectively the de facto border now in Kashmir between India and Pakistan. Military exchanges between the two. They don't happen often, but they certainly do happen with some regularity. We saw those kicking off once more last night. But what I would say is that this mutual exchange by which both sides have infringed each other's airspace is certainly a significant rise in tensions between those two countries.
Secunda, how has it been seeing there in terms of whether or not this is as a crucial kind of breaking point for the two countries?
Well, I think everyone within Pakistan recognises that this is now a very, very serious situation. Let's not forget, these are two countries that are both nuclear armed, that have fought 3 wars against each other over the past 70 years. The Pakistani, there's a pressure really, I think, on both sides to be seen to be responding to each other's attacks. So there was a pressure on the Indian authorities for them to respond to this attack by a militant group. We saw the Indian response yesterday. That response by India yesterday, by coming into Pakistani airspace, gave the Pakistani authorities the feeling that they needed to do something in retaliation almost, and that's what we've seen today. So it's not really clear where exactly this will end. I think the fact that there are 2 Indian pilots in Pakistani custody is now very significant. The Pakistani army has released images of these pilots, and it's not clear yet whether the presence of these 2 pilots could further inflame tensions with India, or India as a result might act with more caution because these men are now in Pakistani custody.
Sangeeta, final question to you. Just put this into context for us, because this dispute has been going back all the way to 1947. Why is Kashmir this disputed territory? Why is it so important to both countries?
Just quickly before I do that, just to pick up on Secunda's point, we've now had the international community reacting to what has been going on. So we've now had the European Union and the United States calling for a